Welcome back, WNST, Dallas, Baltimore, and Baltimore Positive. This is the week. It's finally here. We're going to hit the little red button, and Baltimore Positive is going to appear at WNST Sports, and Luke will be a part of all the things we're doing. We hope you take that in. All of it brought to you by our friends at Sporticulture, where they were selling those incredible flowers to Chiefs fans out there in Kansas City. We've got the purple magma lamp here now, burning the purple magma. You can find that at Sporticulture. I wore my blue, not just because of my friends at Raskin Global, Leonard Raskin, for all of my Kansas City friends this week, but especially for those who were a part of the blue or whose dads were a part of the blue before then. Brian McRae has been my friend since he played ball back in the day, almost 30 years ago now. He has been out in Kansas City talking baseball, teaching baseball, doing good things, being a part of radio and media and ESPN and all sorts of things. We welcome him back on. It is so good to see your face. I said to my wife, I've been Zooming all day with these people from Kansas City that I like, and I get to look at them. This is a way better way to do this. I mean, I'm sorry it took a plague to bring this on, Brian.
Yeah, this is a lot better way, and we're getting used to doing Zooms and getting used to video conferencing and things like that. It is good to see people. It's good to see familiar faces, and it's good to see that people are healthy and doing something other than just sitting around and moping about the situation that we're in.
Well, I've had a lot of sports writers on and, executive types. I've only had a handful of players on during the COVID period of time, and most of the players I know are older because, Angelos took my press pass 15 years ago, so I don't know a lot of the young guys. Give me your athletic thoughts on this for you. Your father having played ball when everything shut down in March and April. It was amazing, man. I mean, I have all these lacrosse kids in my life, right? Baseball kids in our life. That time of the year, senior year, all of that gone. I was a Terps guy, right? They were the number 7 team in the country at the time. I got my Terps magma lamp back here glowing gold and red. And everything stops. But for, people who were athletes, the question of, should I go back? Would I go back? If it were me, hockey players, basketball players, all of that went on for the better part of, 90 days, most of the spring and the summer. It really is kind of amazing that sports has pulled this off, right? That we're back and mostly it's gone not so poorly, right?
I'm surprised that we've made it almost to the end of a Major League Baseball season. I'm not so surprised with how hockey and basketball were able to pull it off because of a bubble. But I didn't think baseball was going to be able to pull it off. Quite frankly, I didn't think, not because of the virus, just because the two sides don't get along, and all the negotiation ploys up to early July just didn't look like, number one, Major League Baseball wanted to forge on and do anything positive, and the players were trying to play more games. They didn't want that happening. So I didn't think that they were going to get an agreement at all to get any games going. And then the players, they're sitting around. Guys aren't able to work out as much as they're used to, and there's doubt in the mind, and you're worried about your family and your loved ones and things like that. Baseball was probably the last thing on a lot of those guys' mind.
Well, and then they have to come back and play, right? And then there was the negotiation. And I'm glad you brought that up. I mean, it takes a player to bring that up, and Lords of the Realm and all of that, because all of that was dredged back up in May and June. And Brian, I don't need to tell you, and I went through this with Jeff Montgomery. You guys can find that out in the buyatoyota.com audio vault as well, just what our cities have been through. I mean, much of our relationship post your career has been you coming on the radio and talking to me about how bad your team sucks or how bad yours sucks worse. No, we're only gonna win 58 this year. Believe me, dude. There's no way we're winning 62. So that went on for a decade and a half, right? And we both got good at the same time, and we had barbecue together out in Kansas City. And I remember you and I getting together at one of your places and watching the Orioles clinch against the Rangers. And the city's picked up baseball again, but it dusted and it settled. And lo and behold, the reason I'm calling you right now is Mahomes and Lamar, right? It is amazing how quickly it came and it went. And I don't know where the residue of Manny Machado is here, but I do know the Hosmer, Kane, Moustakas group. They brought something that your dad was familiar with around there, right?
Right. And I think that, as you say, the residue with the emergence of the Chiefs and the Ravens, that was pushed aside very quickly because there's somebody else to root for and somebody else to get behind. And now these two cities, you wouldn't even think they had a baseball team right now.
Yeah, and it felt that way when they played here, and it felt like of the owners that wouldn't want to play, right, the ones that weren't going to make any money, a developmental year for teams in development, that's what this has been, right? I mean, you spent most of your life now as an adult training up young people to try to make the show and be a good player and fundamentals and all that. This has felt like an Arizona Fall League from my taste, right?
It feels like that from my case, watching the Royals and watching even some teams that are going to make the playoffs. The Cleveland Indians, look at them and what they've done in the past 2 years, getting rid of key components to a team that was a few outs away from winning a World Series in 2016. And, they're going to go to the postseason, but do they really care about going deep into the postseason? It just looks like they're building for 2 and 3 years down the road.
For you, with where baseball's headed, give me the real concerns from a baseball mind, because I mean, you've forgotten more about this than I have, and obviously still boned up on it. It's hard to stay boned up on it around here. I mean, Luke Jones is into it, but I can't have baseball conversations with most of the people that I've had baseball conversations with most of my life because they want to talk about Lamar Jackson right now. I don't know. There's no reason why you wouldn't. And in Kansas City, where the Royals beat the Chiefs to the crown in the modern era after beating them to it with Saberhagen and Brett and everybody else, your dad going back, Patek, all of that stuff, right? But the Royals won first, and I remember pulling out of that parking lot with Luke that night, and I ran into you that night. I ran into Jeff Montgomery that night, and down and underneath, and Ned Yost and Champagne, and I didn't even have the heart to ask Showalter a question, even though I had a press credential. And I felt so good for your community. And I know we did some radio back then, and, it was kind of hard. The Orioles, it kind of come close, but not so close, certainly not in that series. And what happened between then and the time that Mahomes showed up, and then, boom, Mahomes wins a championship, right, in this stellar comeback, the whole deal, right, that they've now stolen the hearts. And it's been in the blink of an eye that the blue has become red in your city pretty quickly.
Yeah, it has. And I think that, unfortunately, for your older generation, like me, I'm mid-50s now, we have never seen a good run where both the Royals and the Chiefs have played competitive ball at the same time. And that's unfortunate because this is a good sports town. And you just like to see both teams have some semblance of success at the same time. And it's either been, feast or famine. And I think a lot of it parallels to what you've gone through in Baltimore also with the Orioles, and you had the Colts there, and now the Ravens. There's a lot that's gone on, and when one team's been good, there's been turmoil and stress and drama with the other one.
I was going to ask you, when's the first time you walked into Camden Yards? Because it feels like, it was pretty early on, right? I mean, you were in Camden Yards when it was really vibrant, right?
When I first came up, I played in Old Memorial Stadium. And so I was able to play in Camden Yards the first year it opened. Was that 92?
92.
Yeah, 92 when it opened.
So what I want to tell you right now is going to stun you, but it doesn't, because you're in your mid-50s, and I know I turned 52 in a couple weeks. This is the last year of the lease. This is, they signed a 30-year lease to save the Orioles forever, to keep them out of D.C., right? Like that was the goal if you historically look it up. And we lost the Colts and William Donald Schaefer. They get the money. A guy from D.C., Edward Bennett Williams, owned the team. The threat was always that the team was going to wind up at D.C., but it didn't. And we get Camden Yards, it's built. And now 30 years later, I'm consistently discussing the future of the franchise here and whether it will work again here.
And that's a shame, because the success of the Orioles, they were a model organization in Major League Baseball for a very long time. It was the Reds, Orioles, Dodgers, teams like that were, they were model organizations. Other organizations tried to build like the Baltimore Orioles, especially in the American League. You tried to build your pitching defense. You tried to model what the Orioles had done.
Oh, and then we would come out to Kansas City, and your dad and everybody, Willie Wilson, they're all run around hitting triples into the gap. Completely different brand of baseball you all played out there, right?
Yeah, well, he had the turf, and that changed things. But there's still that brand was still basically pitching and defense, and then they added the offensive component with the turf, and then they just double you to death and run you all around.
Ragged.
Yes, and they did a great job of it, and that was a 10-year run, probably unlike anything we'll see here in Kansas City baseball-wise.
Well, and you wonder where the runs are, and when you have a run, which wasn't that long ago, where the Buck Showalters and the Adam Joneses and the Manny Machados, it is amazing to me that there's no residue of that, right? Like that it really does go away quickly. And then, which brings us to the reason I'm calling you, which ain't baseball, right, Brian McRae? Mahomes and Lamar, this phenomenon of these players and this era and the way that they play in the era of Colin Kaepernick, in the era of racial divide, in the era of a plague, all of this stuff goes on. And the good times, a Monday night game where the world champions and the Super Bowl MVP coming in. This is the night you want to be in the front row creating hell for Patrick Mahomes. I said going to Houston the other day, Lamar had a much easier afternoon in Houston working in an empty environment. The emptiness is at first sort of striking, and then the game starts, and I'm just happy it's 1 o'clock and it's Sunday and the game's on, right? Like the last couple of weeks, football's been the only normal feeling thing in my life the last 7 months.
Yeah, it does seem somewhat normal. And here in Kansas City, opening night on a couple Thursdays ago, they were allowed to have fans. So that felt a little bit better. And, it's just a strange feeling because we in Kansas City remember 7 months ago or whatever it was, 8 months ago when we were on top of the world. Chiefs had just won a Super Bowl in comeback fashion. We just celebrated a parade. And within a month of Kansas City being crowned Super Bowl champions for the first time in forever, everything shut down, and the city and the team and the fans don't get to celebrate what you would normally celebrate after
you
winning.
Get to wear your gear around town and stuff. You know what I mean? Like that's part of the deal. You get the hat.
Like 3 weeks of it after the parade, and then everything was shut down.
That's 3 weeks in the winter in the middle of the Midwest, too. That doesn't even count, man. You can't wear it on the boat in the spring. But, for the team and for the fallout of winning, and, I've had on Adam Teicher this week with his book, and Mahomes has been such a class act and such a good thing, right? Like, and as I said to Montgomery, well, he's a baseball player's kid. Of course he's going to be a good kid, right?
It's been something that the Chiefs organization has not been able to get over the stigma of not being able. Why can't you develop a quarterback? All the good quarterbacks in Chiefs history, going back to Lenny Dawson, have come from somewhere else. They had never done that. And they'd had some high picks, guys that had failed. And they finally were able to do it with Patrick Mahomes, who a lot of NFL insiders and scouts and GMs didn't really think that he was that good because they thought he put up numbers at Texas Tech just because of the system that he was in.
We did discuss Todd Blackledge this week.
Pardon me?
We did discuss Todd Blackledge this week at one point.
Todd
because I was
Blackledge,
trying to figure out who were I was going through all the Bonos and the Gerbacks and the Montanas, the Bird. Right. They all came from somewhere.
It almost looked like they had a San Francisco connection. They brought in the guy from San Francisco that had been there and had some success. And the guys, some of them played well here in Kansas City, but not being able to develop a quarterback in your system, draft and develop him. And this goes back to, like I said, since the team moved here from Dallas, that's hard to do. Not hit once.
we had that going on a little bit after Dilfer left here, right? We had Dilfer, Gerback, Blake. I mean, it went on and on and on until Flacco showed up, right? So Kyle Bowler. I mean, McNair. We went through that around here, and that's a little different than what they were doing in Indianapolis or in New England or these stable places. It feels as though the stability there, the $450 million, the champagne, and all that. And then there's Lamar, right? Like, the word on Lamar is hasn't won a game in January yet, but you do not want to see Lamar come into your building and razzle-dazzle and run around. And more than that, they've just built so much around Lamar and how quickly the organization moved from Flacco to Lamar and how quickly the success came. And I've said this to folks really the last 2 weeks, but the last 2 seasons, he has gotten better. He is that athlete that you measure him at every step. He's a better passer this year than he was last year, which was better than the year before. He's making better decisions through these first 2 games and going to the right place with the ball almost all the time. And so there's growth in him. But until he beats Mahomes, until he wins in January, these are the games he gets measured on now, because beating the Browns by 4 touchdowns has become like commonplace.
Right. It means nothing right now until he can beat Mahomes and Baltimore can supplant Kansas City. New England's gone. They're in the rearview mirror now. Now the 2 teams battling for supremacy in the AFC are going to be, and the way it looks is Baltimore and Kansas City. And until Lamar can beat the Chiefs and Mahomes late in the season, that's the only thing that, this season is going to be, can Baltimore beat Kansas City? That's what it's going to come down to.
I think it might be, can these 2 teams do what they need to do when they kiss and say goodbye at midnight on Monday night, right? Whatever the outcome is, somebody going to be 2-1, somebody going to be 3-0. I hope it's us. But the feeling of home field advantage and all of this, that's the weird part of this, is that Mahomes is getting a little bit of a free cookie on Monday night coming in here without having to deal with my wife in the upper deck. And that's just my wife, and you know that.
I think they will meet again. Last year was set up to where they were going to meet in Baltimore. It looked like everybody had the plans.
But you were not going to have a tourist crab cake. I was going to take you to Al's down in Essex.
I was ready.
Trust me.
But I think they meet again. And this is the year where Lamar, he's going to say that I am as good or equal to Patrick Mahomes.
He's fun to watch, isn't he?
I think this is the year. They're both getting better. They both make better decisions. I think that with looking at both clubs, Baltimore's a little bit better on the defensive side. A lot of injuries with the Chiefs. They've had some issues there tackling and in the first 2 games and have not really played cleanly. But I'm looking forward to Monday's game, and then just for the rest of the season look at how these 2 teams perform, and hopefully they can stay healthy and they can meet again in January where fans can go to a game if it's not in Kansas City.
Brian McRae's here, my longtime friend, former Royal, former Met, former player, former ESPN guy, now in Kansas City. I don't know what to say about you. You're still teaching baseball. Give everybody a primer on what Brian McRae and the McRae family is.
I'm still teaching, doing lessons, doing things like that. But the virus kind of put the skids on coaching and traveling with my youth league teams. We didn't do as much this summer, and now with school about to go back, we're just waiting and in a holding pattern to see what kind of fall baseball schedule we're going to have. Colleges aren't able to recruit right now. It's a dead period that's been extended. So it's hard to get our kids signed for the next year and the next couple of years. We can't put them on college campuses like we were able to do as much over the past few years. So I just been spending a lot of time. I have a 14-year-old daughter going into 8th grade. And I probably have a couple more years that she still thinks daddy's cool before she wants to do her own thing. So I just been spending a lot of time with her and just trying to check in on my parents down in Florida, make sure they're doing well. And, all those things that, I didn't ever get to do in the summers because I was coaching or playing ball. I tried to, do some of those different things and spend more time with my daughter and go to the lake a couple times and get away and just not make this situation a negative and find some good positive things to do with my family out of it.
We found that there's a pond in Patterson Park. I've been walking through Patterson Park all 52 years of my life. Did not know there's a pond in there. We found it one night going on a walk. So, little things. We're trying to find the positives in all of this. Last thing for you, it would be remiss. I do a lot of political activism here. We've opened up to talk about race and baseball and crime and all these things going on. Baseball, race, where you come from, where you are, anything you want to throw into this in Kansas City where when I go to baseball games, most people there don't look like you. I'll be honest with you.
The biggest key, I think, in all of this is just opportunities. And I've seen in Major League Baseball the opportunity for the Latin American ball player to succeed with all the academies and all the money that all these teams spend in the Dominican, in Venezuela, in Puerto Rico. I want to see that same type of aggressiveness going to the kids here. Give these kids the same opportunity that you give the 15 and 16-year-old kids from the Dominican Republic. I know there's some youth academies, the urban youth academies that Major League Baseball has built in different places across the country. But I don't think they've spent the kind of money and the resources and the time here in their own country in the United States as they have outside. That's what I want to see.
Well, I've heard more talk about RBI and all this stuff over 30 years and reported on it and had stories about it. I don't know where the impact is. Like, I live in an urban environment. I have seen young African-Americans play baseball. I be honest with you, I was driving up Harford Road year and a half ago, and there's a whole league in the city playing baseball, and that kind of that made me feel great. When I was a kid growing up, black kids, white kids, east, west, north, we all played baseball, and I'm in a lacrosse city, right? Like, literally, right? So it has become a lacrosse city, and that's not black or white. That's east, west, north, and south. This is a lacrosse community now. It is not a youth baseball community. It was at one point. My last name's Aparicio, right? So I have witnessed it, and then I see what else going on in other places. I thought a place like Kansas City winning a championship would make every kid want to go out and be Hosmer the way I wanted to be your dad, the way you wanted to be. I wanted to be Brett. I'm lying. No offense to your dad, Otis, any of those guys. Patek, he was little like me, but I was a Brett guy, even though I wasn't left-handed. But, the idolization of baseball players and the Mickey Mantles and the cereal boxes and is Mike Trout a big star? You guys went through it where everybody had blue, everybody had a hat, they won a championship. Are more kids really playing baseball in Overland Park right now than were 10 years ago because they won? I don't know. I'd love to think the answer is yes.
Yes, all over Kansas City. After that run, we're 5 years away from it now, but you're seeing the signs that sparked a resurgence in baseball. But I still think that there's more that can be done, and that more that should be done. And hopefully, after all this is over, we will see baseball not only talk a good game, but go out there and do some things that prove, and that's not just to the African American community, just to your community itself. Just allow more people to understand how great of a game this is and participate in it and have fun with it. This is a great game.
I love your shirt. Everyone. I love that you came on the Zoom wearing some Royals swag. So and we both love baseball. It's how we met. At one point in my life when I did Free the Birds, which, by the way, 14 years ago yesterday, I did Free the Birds. It was my love of baseball. And at that point in my life, I wrote a book about how much I love baseball. My father. And I realized almost everyone in my life at that point came into my life because of baseball. That's how every person had something to do with the Orioles or an Oriole game or someone I met through radio, which the first 6 years of my career, there were no Ravens, right? It was just all baseball here
Right.
in your era, in Camden Yards, right? Where we were selling out winter carnivals and they would sell the whole season out before Christmas. I mean, it's unthinkable how much it's fallen. And when guys like you and me get together and try to talk about how to bring it back, I think it really does come down to leadership, man. You know, this is about John Angelos and Rob Manfred and the people running the sport, making sure that your child, black, white, or wherever, loves baseball and is engaged in baseball. I don't know who's in charge of that department, but it's never felt like much of anyone.
And with some of the things that have gone on, especially in recent current events here, it makes you seem like you're scratching your head. It's like, who is in charge? Are they really the ones that we want leading the way for baseball? Because it's scary right now.
Well, I think it's scary everywhere, man. Take care of yourself. Wash your hands out there. Wear a mask. You know, if you win on Monday night, I would think that the door prize for me might be a trip to Kansas City in January to have some barbecue. If we win on Monday night, the door prize for you would be some crab cakes from Costas or Faidley's. I'll take you on a crab cake tour to all of my sponsors, and you can have one of each, and then you can pick and choose. How about that?
Yeah, I even want to come back if there's no fans allowed. What are they saying about down the road, the Ravens?
We got no one here right now, and you know one of the issues here, and I don't talk about this a lot, but I should talk about it more. And I think this started at the beginning of COVID, is that when you think of Baltimore, you think of crab cakes or Cal Ripken or Under Armour, you know, whatever you think of Baltimore, Baltimore really is a medical hub for the whole world. Johns Hopkins, University of Maryland. You know, we have some of the best hospital systems in the world. We're right off 95, right between Baltimore, Philadelphia, New York. And we've always been there from Hopkins for 150 years. This could not be the place that New York was from a COVID outbreak standpoint. This couldn't be the place where our doctors were dying from COVID. So I think there's always been a little bit more conservative in the city. Not necessarily the governor who's a Republican, because that's what it comes down to, whether you're blue or red. But in the city, there's been a lot of debate because the numbers have been higher. People have been congregating back in the spring, and we've tried to keep the numbers down, I think, to protect the hospital systems here. That's my belief. Because if the hospitals go, you're screwed.
We can watch a game in January in someone's stadium in an AFC championship game between the Ravens and the Chiefs.
As long as it's not in Buffalo, man. I won't be going, even though the wings are good. Hey, B-Mac, appreciate you, man. Take care of yourself. It's great to have you on. I appreciate you always answering the call, man.
All right. Nestor, thank you very much. Good seeing you.
Enjoy that time with the family in Kansas City, man. We'll be watching the game together on Monday night.
All right. Sounds good. Thank you.
You got it. Brian McRae, my friend, former Royal, former big leaguer. Dad was a former big leaguer and a champion as well. He's out in Kansas City doing the baseball thing and always hovering around WHB. And my pal Jeff Montgomery joined us. Lots and lots of Kansas City guests. Looking forward to Monday night and the Chiefs and the Ravens, just the way we drew it up in the middle of a plague. Nasty at WNST.net finds me. We are merging the WNST.net brand with the Baltimore Positive brand. That'll be happening this weekend. I think you're going to like it. We are WNST.net, AM 1570, Towson, Baltimore. And we never stop talking Baltimore Positive.